Bendiciones, everybody. Alafia. So today we got a very, very special guest. You know, the man, the myth, the legend, Baba Joseph Ifa. What's up, brother?
Brujo, what's good, man? Thank you so much. I love the being called the myth, man. That's the first one, but that's pretty awesome. Thank you so much.
No, seriously, like, and we'll get into it, but your knowledge of Odu, bro, it's a thing of like legend and like mythology. Like, I never met a person who is like a computer for Odu. That is
Yes,
crazy.
yeah. I never really expected it to be like that. I remember when I first started studying Ifa, I was actually pretty intimidated because I remember I saw my godfather do ebo for the first time, and then I would see him. He was starting to let me sit in on the readings once I gave the money. And I was pretty intimidated because I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to apply myself like that to be able to learn those things and be able to recall them. So when I actually did Ifa and I started learning prayers, like to be able to, perform ebo, I actually incorporated a study method that I learned in remedial collegiate classes because I was very bad at mathematics leaving high school, but I still was able to get an academic scholarship. So it was a little bit of a conundrum. So they had me take some study courses. And I remember when I did IFA, I said, well, I don't know how to study other than what I learned in college. So let me see if that applies. And little by little, I was able to, start memorizing things. And then I attribute my knowledge to Odu, first and foremost, to the amazing library that my godfather, 𝗀𝗲𝗵𝗏, gave me. And then apart from that, all of the brothers that, spoke Ifa around me, that really stuck as well. But just pounding the information in. I mean, per sign, I studied a month. Some I finished quicker, some took longer. But, I calculated in the very beginning if I took a month per sign, I'd know the whole oracle pretty well in 20 years. And Ifa is a long game, it's an old man's game to a certain
Right.
degree. So, I said if I pace myself out this way, I'll be able to recollect enough information in a reading to be worth the cost of it.
Right. And you know the thing about Odu, man. And this is something that I learned from an elder of mine. Odu is unique in the fact that it's never ending. You
Yeah,
know, so Odu is constantly being written. You know what I'm saying? A person is born with an Odu. Let's say somebody is born with, 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁 or something like that, right? In the course of their life, they are going through the experience of that Odu.
correct.
And so therefore, this is getting written into, I guess, what people who study Kemet would say they're Akashic records, right? It's getting written and it's becoming a part of Odu. So now when that person, based on their challenges or experiences that they go through with Odu, you know, um, they may develop a story, right? Let's say now that person translates that to Yoruba and they teach that to their child, who in turn teaches it to their grandchild, who in turn teaches it to their grandchildren. When that person who originally lived out Odu is said and gone, and those children are chanting that story in Yoruba through Odu, they are now bringing in the power of their ancestry. And this is how you get a lot of Odu chants and verses that nobody knows about that are like specific to that family. You know, we see this a lot in 𝘃𝗂𝗃𝗃 where like you're like, where you hear that verse from? But that really came from like an ancestor that was born 𝘃𝗶𝗃𝗁 and went through this as an 𝘃𝗃𝗃𝗁 and kept it in an oral tradition. That's like the amazing thing of like our tradition, man. Because Odu can never fit all in one book. You
No,
know what I'm saying? Like,
no.
so yeah, can you speak to like the endlessness of Odu?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Well, the word Odu or Odun, when we really translate it, means year. So it makes reference to time. Um, you know, why is it never ending? Because Ifa is alive. When we look at what an Odu of Ifa is, it's nothing more than a spiritual double helix of DNA. So within the matrix that we live in, each of us represents that combination. And our experiences are what are compiled to be able to be passed down. Remember that the patakis or the SFA as they're known, they were written by men. Now, it's a little more profound than just divine inspiration because they were actually living it. It wasn't a message that was necessarily transferred to them via some spirituality per se, even though that is a possibility, and I'm sure there are some pataki that were influenced that way. But I want to say the original text that we have, whether it's Cuba or Nigeria, these were experiences that people actually lived or were given, the information was given by people who were actually there to provide firsthand accounts of information. So that's where it comes from. And then, I go through that a lot where on the channel, sometimes I'll say a story or a version of a story from a sign, and some of the brothers will come to me and be like, where'd you get that? And we're very blessed within my lineage. I mean, we only have to go back 4 gentlemen to be able to, reconnect with Africa, where some other lineages within the Lukumi, they have to go possibly 10 to 15 men. So I have a lot of firsthand information, stuff that I would consider artifact or relic at this point, that had to be laminated because, it was falling apart or the ink was fading or, what have you. But that's what is the best testament, is that Ifa is alive and we're writing our story as we're living it, whether it's your Odu, whether it's my Odu, 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲. I mean, we are, new things happen, and you can leave behind your life story. And, if somebody has that Odu or is referencing that Odu, and this happens all the time where, hey, Baba Joseph went through this, or saying, or Brujo went through this, or, it's ultimate reference material so we can lead better lives and not make the same mistakes that we did in the past one.
Yeah. So you saying you can't buy a book that contains our whole story for $9.99 in a Walmart.
Oh God, no! Not even in Botánica Candles and More. To be frank with you, I mean, it's not. And we're very ethical people, so those are things that we would really not allow to be on the shelves either. Because that's why you need a Baba to guide you through this. Because there are certain verses and whatnot that are very initiation specific, and there's a curse upon this information. Not that it's cursed to read it, but the old 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶, they left enchantments and things like that on this literature. 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶 himself did, so that whoever read it that wasn't supposed to, they could lose a couple things. They could lose their mind. They could lose their partner. They could lose their family. So that's why it's really important to not delve into information that doesn't pertain to you. And then apart from that, have a Baba that can guide you through this to be able to always fall into ire and never into taboo when it comes to studying. Because there is a lot you can study before doing Ifa or Osha. But, you want to be guided. So there is that mentorship aspect to be able to protect yourselves.
So, knowing how far you've come into, mastery of that, when we talk about Odu, because I definitely consider that. I know you a humble guy, but you really have a mastery, brother. You really
Thank you.
do. So, how did you get started on your journey? Take us back to the beginning when Baba Joseph Ifa, before it was technically Baba Joseph Ifa. How did that journey look in the beginning?
Well, I mean, I was born in Miami, right? So I was specifically born in Opa-locka, near 151st and 27th Avenue, which is known as Unity. And then from there, we lived in Hialeah. My neighborhood was known as Lago Grande. It's near Palmetto Hospital. And we lived there for the first 5 years of my life. And, it's just a cultural thing. I mean, it's like you can't walk anywhere in Miami without seeing some version of Ifa or Orisha expressed. That's why I sincerely believe it's kind of like the Mecca of Ifa and Orisha practice in this country, in my opinion, originally, So from there, experiences with the culture. I remember the first time I really knew we were into something different was when they were doing an offering to a 𝗃𝗵𝗹𝗁, which is an Our Lady of Charity. They had a pumpkin, some honey, some sprinkles, a couple yellow candles, and I was very interested in that. And I asked what it was, and my aunt was like, "Don't ask questions, just learn." And I was like, "Okay." So I knew we were into something really different because I didn't see that happening in church. You know what I'm saying? When we would go to like El Rincón de San Lázaro on 4th, and we weren't a conventional Catholic, Christian family because we were doing odd things in the evening. So at that point, my interest started peaking, and even when we moved here to Orlando, we would always kind of go back and forth to Miami, visit, stay some time, etc. And I would just be exposed more and more to the culture. But ultimately, when I really took my first solid steps was around the time I was 16 or 17. I think I had my first job, that was actually paying money that mattered. And, I decided to move forward with a gentleman to be able to receive my warriors, which I did. And from there, it was kind of a whirlwind. I actually met him through my mother, who was working at a resort at the time. There was a gentleman that was a coworker that connected me to him. And it was ultimately through that gentleman, even though, at that point, we kind of distanced due to the fact that he moved and whatnot. I was able to get the recommendation from the same God brother to be able to meet my godfather, who ended up giving me the hand of Ifa and ultimately doing Ifa to me. So
Right.
it's a story that spanned, over a lifetime ultimately, because, when you're younger, you experience and delve into different things, you're finding yourself. But regardless of whether I was trying to, I don't know, play football or rap or I don't know, whatever it was that, goes through a teenage mind,
Right.
Ifa was always there. So, it was
Mm.
something that I always had a focus on, like, hey, if nothing else works out, it was actually my backup plan, to be honest with you. Even though it was really the plan, I didn't realize that as a young adolescent
Right.
man. So that's kind of like the background per se.
So, as we go through these things, those of us who come in to the practice, we often see signs that maybe at the time we didn't realize was that. And a lot of times these are, certain Orishas that may be speaking through our Odu, maybe your head Orisha, things like that. What was like the first Orisha that you realize now was that? What was like the first Orisha that kind of came to you along your journey?
Wow. Yeah, I'll never forget. I had an aunt. I have an aunt that's initiated in Yemaya for like 40 years. She did Odisha in New York back then, in like the heyday of when the Cuban people were coming over, and there was a real cultural like renaissance going on up there.
Mm.
But I'll never forget. We went to visit Miami one time, and said aunt took me to a woman's house. And this woman now I realized was a priestess of 𝘃𝗺𝗃, and she lived in a neighborhood known as 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗏, right, which is very like entrenched in this, and there's a lot of culture there and a lot of it's very urban. So when we went into the room where they had their odishas and things like this, I think I was like maybe 8, something like that. That's how much this has
Mm.
stuck with me. And she had this beautiful 𝗃𝗏𝗏, like that was just like 4 or 5 feet tall, and she had like these beautiful red cloths around the room, and the batea of 𝗃𝗺 was there, and I don't know why, but I just knelt. The odd things that
Mm.
kids do, like even me as a child at that point, I felt like this reverence, and I was like, I should probably kneel right now. And I'll never
Mm.
forget, the lady even said it, and I get chills thinking about it now. She said, this boy is meant for something. Because it's not
Mm.
behavior that you really see from children, especially if we aren't blessed enough to be born into a Yoruba household, or really a household where Orisha is super present. Even within my home,
Mm.
no one was, had Orisha done or anything like that. So I'll never forget, 𝗃𝗺 was that first real experience for me. And then apart from that, the experience I had with the pumpkin offering and whatnot. But it's interesting because when I read my sign for the first time, it was pretty emotional because 𝗃𝗺 was 𝗃𝗏𝗃 first steps into Ifa. So when
Mm.
𝗃𝗏𝗃 was adopted by 𝗀𝗃𝗃 as a slave child, he basically raised him together with his other son 𝗃𝗺, who was known as Oramiyang at the moment. And they basically trained him in Ifa, initiated him into Ifa, where he ended up becoming the Onife, which is the
Oh
spiritual king
wow.
of the Yoruba people. That position was born in the Odu of Esekangola, within our literature. And it was 𝗃𝗺 who really gave him the position, because when Odudua became older and, his sight was suffering, and 𝗃𝗺 was tired of being a priest and a prince, he wanted to go conquer Oyo, with what would become Oyo. He left his most trusted adopted brother with the care of their father and said, when the old man passes, the crown is yours, and I'll make sure that no matter what, everyone will take an oath to never invade Ife. That's why till this day, the kings of Ife, when they get initiated or inducted, they have to swear to never revolt against their spiritual capital.
Mm.
So that was my first real experience. 𝗃𝗺 was really, he was there from the beginning. And my
Yeah.
mother has crowned 𝗃𝗺, and my grandmother was a daughter of 𝗃𝗺 before she passed. Yeah.
Wow. So, it's amazing to like look at the interactions between spirits and children, you know, because I
Mm,
look at my own son, like when he was old enough to walk, right before 1 years old, he was already, you could already see the interaction. And it's like the connection when you foster it between children and spirits, it becomes uncanny as they continue to grow, and by the time my son was 2 years old and I'm working in the daytime in the cemetery, helping people overcome certain things or whatever, he frolicking through the graveyard. Now the graveyard got fences and everything, so it's like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah.
you
That's
know,
that's daycare.
you know, they care what they get in.
Word.
But that's just like the connection, when children have with spirits. So can you kind of speak to that, like for those who may not know, why is it that children, have this pure connection with like the other side or these spiritual entities?
Absolutely. Now, I've heard explanations from other brothers or older 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗏s that what happens is 𝗃𝗏𝗿𝗃 is still developing and it's still open to a certain degree. I mean, when we look at the human cranium, it takes time for it to harden and shut because the head is still molding, as they're growing up. So spiritually, the same thing is occurring. So that link or that chain between heaven and the mind, or Ori, or 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗏 and Ori, is still very present. Now, one of two things can happen. Either we can coddle it and nurture it so that that link, even when Ori closes via, the skull, is still present, where they're able to exercise that spiritual muscle. Or there's other cases where it's completely dimmed, based on possibly a lack of knowledge of the family about spirituality or a complete resistance towards it. I think another thing is the innocence. When we look at spiritism or even concepts within Ifa, the innocence and purity of heart is what allows positive things such as certain spirits and energies to get close to you. So what we try to do is we can never lose that light of innocence that we had when we were youthful, regardless of all the horrible things that can happen in this world, which they do. So that's another reason for that huge connection. And 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗏 loved kids, and I think
Mhm.
when we look at the formation of the personality happening within 6 to 7 years, and you look kind of at Ifa's, dictamination in the 𝗃𝗏𝗹𝗁 that, we have to be patient when initiating children to allow Ori to kind of settle. I think it's a very crucial point, for the rest of our lives. I think, you look at said tyrant or despot, what happened in their youth that caused them to go down that path. I do believe
Mhm.
people can be born with a biological predisposition towards certain things, but I think ultimately the culture and, the nurturing that we give to that child is what's going to dictate how their life is going to
Mhm.
go. So I think that's why there's such a huge connection between children and spirituality, because they're so pure and those energies want to be around
Mhm.
things that are pure. So we have to nurture
Man.
that through knowledge.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because like something my abuela, always taught me, um, was basically, to remain childlike with the things that you do. And as me being an Omo Eshu, that's something that's inherently there,
Yeah,
the childlike nature. You never really grow up, right? But
yeah,
it's to me that imagination as well that comes with being childlike, because you think about it, when you're a child, anything is literally possible.
yeah.
It's not until you get into like, by the time you get into high school, the world has killed your dreams for the most part. You know
It
what I'm
can
saying? Like the world
definitely.
has, they have come and said, no, you can't do that because of this, and you can't do that because of this, and now they kind of box you in. But when your mind is still childlike, this is now when we get things like the Wright brothers and airplanes. Like, who thought of that? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
you can fly. Like that's a childlike thing. Egbe, you can fly.
yeah,
And this is very important for people listening to your practice. Remain childlike. Anything is possible. And the spirits will receive that and respond to it. But Baba
definitely.
Joseph Ifa, I know that during your journey, you've come into struggle, right?
Yeah.
What Orishas would you say were instrumental in getting you through your trials and tribulations along your journey?
Oh man, I got to give that one to the Warriors. I really do. Because I remember when I received them, I was about 17. And unfortunately, around that time, like before I began my senior year in high school, we actually got displaced. We were homeless, right? So right after giving, I don't know, the last 500, I don't know, to $1,000 that I saved up, I don't remember how much they cost me, over 10 years ago. We ended up, having to move in with my uncle. So, he had a packed house. God bless him. He opened his doors to us. But I was actually sleeping in a closet with my Orishas in a box right next to my head every night before I would go to school. And I remember I had a conversation with my mother, who I did an episode with. And she asked me, she said, we're putting a bunch of things in storage. Do you want to put them in there? And I said, no, because I believe in loyalty. I don't believe in abandonment. So if I'm going through pain, unfortunately, they have to go through that pain right with me. They have to see my sacrifice and my struggle, and if they're going to help me through it and, we go through it together. I believe in the worst times, if people are there, they deserve the best times once they arrive. So, I have to give that to the Warriors and specifically Eshu and knowing the role he plays in my sign where he really opens the path and, prepares conditions for 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲 to be able to achieve. So Eshu's my guy, definitely. Eshu was there and the Warriors were there before anybody.
Eshu is one. Eshu often he'll come to his children before they ever think about going into Ifa. Like Eshu, because like I know personally in my experience, growing up, Eshu was always there. But there was one particular time that Eshu came and it forever it will just be ingrained in my head. And so I was at a flea market, and at the time I had two girlfriends I was with, it's Eshu stuff. And they were both with me. There's a lot of reasons why children of Eshu can really live like that.
Yeah, they're wild.
But
guys.
I had two girlfriends, so we in the market. And after we get done walking the market, the car is all the way down this steep, steep hill. I didn't want them to walk down the hill. So I'm like, look, I'm going to catch my breath here, get a break, then I'm going to walk down there, pull the car up. And, this old man, he's limp. He has a cane. He has a limp. He has a necklace with a bunch of keys on it. Oh, wow. And he has Jamaican flag colors on. And he sits right at the table, right at the bench with me, where me and my girlfriends are saying that. I'm like, that's kind of bold. You know what I'm saying? Because like you feel your space get invaded.
Word. Yeah, and you're a protector, you're the one line of defense between him and them.
Yeah. So, he looks at me and he's like, and he looks like homeless, like he don't have nowhere to go. He's missing teeth. And he's like, are you my son? I'm cocky because I'm like, your son? I got my two girlfriends right here. I'm like,
ain't nobody's son of me.
Man, yeah, I'm like, man, get your ass out of here, old head. You know what I'm saying? This is how I'm talking to him now.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're my son. You're my son. Who's your dad? Who's your father? I said, I know my father. My father is such and such. He said, you're my son. You don't know shit. That's what he told me. He said, you don't know shit. And I'm just flabbergasted, like, that this old head, mind you, I'm from Jersey. We go back and forth like this anyway up north.
Word. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm like, man, whatever, old man, you crazy ass old man. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. And then he's like, do you know where you're from? I'm like, yeah, I know where I'm from. My family is from this, and that, and Puerto Rico, and this. He like, man, you don't know shit. You don't know shit. That was his favorite thing to tell me. And I was like, all right, whatever, man. This old head. He said, you're my son. Just know you're my son. And then he just like turns around in his chair and just sits there with the cane looking off into the market. Come to find out, Eshu really is my dad. The old man wasn't lying. Yo,
Yeah,
that's the first thing I thought about. I said, yo, Eshu came to me and I damn near cussed him out when he
yeah,
first.
yeah. He comes like that. He
So
comes disguised. Yeah, there's so many people I've met that have had similar interactions like that.
yeah, and in the marketplace, that's a place where you often see him. But Eshu is one who truly can be considered like the most compassionate Orisha because he know both sides.
Definitely.
He knows why it happened. This is why, I could move the way I was moving, have two girlfriends, because I understand what she needs and where she's coming from. I understand what she needs, where she's coming from. And then, not to mention Eshu is associated with phallic symbols. So,
Oh
he
yeah,
can he can get it done.
yeah.
Right. And that just, and he's honest. Eshu, contrary to what people think, Eshu's not a liar. So Eshu don't have to lie to
Not at
people.
all.
You know
Not
what
at
I'm
all.
saying? Eshu doesn't have to live in lies. You know, um, can you kind of speak to that, like the misconceptions around Eshu and being liars and things like that?
I think what Eshu does is he's so brutally honest. He puts the truth in front of people in a way where they don't want to accept it. So, due to their own frustrations, they call it a lie, but they don't realize it's the lie that they're living and that they've perpetuated upon themselves. Eshu is the balance. He is the definition of black and white. And if that is black and white, he is the gray if there is any. I mean,
Mm,
um, a couple things you actually mentioned there that I wanted to cite, and the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗲 was where Eshu actually went and started living in the marketplace because he saw the opportunities to test people's character. And
mm,
Eshu's phallic power is in the Odu. There's a couple, but one that comes to mind is 𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗍𝗔 or 𝗵𝗵𝗸𝗶𝗍𝗔, which says, when the son of Eshu is ready, there's no person that can resist. So, with power comes great responsibility. But however anybody
mm,
chooses to live their life, honestly, is their own situation, is to be respected as long
mm,
as everybody's on board. But Eshu is marvelous. He's really marvelous because I've had so many people come to me, and I've had personal experiences where, I've had my character tested by someone in a similar situation or with a similar appearance, where afterward, I'll get a reading or whatever, and they'll be like, hey, you have to be careful with people who are displaced or on the corner, and you can't
mm,
mistreat them. And I'll be like, man, I messed up there.
mm,
So he's constantly testing our character and making sure that we're upholding those concepts of 𝗃𝗏 to be able to deserve the
mm,
𝗃𝗍𝗃 that he disperses. But yeah, he'll pop up on you. Another one that'll do it, 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗲 will do it,
mm,
𝗵𝗵𝗎𝗍 will do it. They'll come disguised. So you have to be on point and always move. The Yoruba say you always have to move like you have eyes on you. So you have to
mm,
behave, you know what I'm saying? And you have to have a lot of patience, and you have to know the difference between what's real and what you feel. I mean,
mm,
if you look at the old guy on the bench with you, he really wasn't doing nothing. He was talking. You know what I'm saying?
right.
And as we get older, we have to become impervious to words, because a word could lead to an action, and then an action could lead to a consequence. So
Mm,
that's, as we get older, we can't really pay attention to certain things. And I think that's the lesson he was trying to teach you. And then, he's pointing to the marketplace. And, when you look at Yoruba philosophy, they say, we are in the marketplace. We're in the marketplace of 𝗃𝗶𝗹𝗁𝗲, trying to make it back home, which is heaven, right?
mm,
So really, really profound conversation the guy had with you, but it's hard to, listen to somebody who's, with the Jamaican colors and with the toothless, vibe. So, you just got to pay attention to the message, not the messenger.
Ashe.
You know what I'm saying?
And that brings to a conversation about Ori. Um, I've noticed, a lot of people new that are coming into Ifa, especially in the West. They kind of, they put an emphasis on Ori, but some people put an emphasis on Ori to the point that they feel as though they don't need anything in the world but Ori by itself within the culture.
Yeah.
And my thing is like Ori gets misguided a lot,
Yeah.
because Ori is made of so many different parts. Just between Ori Inu and Ori Ode, right there, those two aspects can be out of alignment or,
Yeah.
anything like that. So can you speak to kind of the ways that Ori may be misguided and why people have to kind of always return back to some of the sources with their guardians and things like that to keep it in alignment?
Absolutely. Well, just going back to the beginning, like when we're talking about 𝗀𝗲, we're talking about the whole religion. 𝗀𝗲 is nothing more than the extension of 𝗀𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗲 via 𝘃𝗵, which is the sacred breath, and his daughter within the human body, right? They have to both be there in conjunction for life to be possible. The divine breath and the divine spirituality, which lives within the head. It's our whole religion. The whole religion is based on appeasing 𝗀𝗲, or our destiny. That's why we have Orishas, right? Orisha means guardian of 𝗀𝗲, or selected head, which was used to appease 𝗀𝗲. So the idea that we only need 𝗀𝗲 is pretty erroneous, because if that's the case, 𝗀𝗲 and Oshun and all these people wouldn't have been created or identified, right? When we're talking about 𝗀𝗲 or the 𝗀𝗲 that lives within, we're born with that. That's in the 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗶𝗍𝗏, which is centralized between 3 points. You have 𝗀𝗲, you have 𝗃onu, which is centralized in the belly button, and 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏, which lives in the left big toe. That's why if you notice in the traditional Ibori, those are the 3 points that they focus on. In the Afro-Cuban Lukumi one, we base ourselves heavily off of the Odus 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗏𝗏 as well as 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏, where the joints are more focused on. But I myself, as well as a lot of brothers, still incorporate the African points, because that's the spiritualities upon which the body stabilizes. Now, there's not a lot of emphasis on it in the New World, because a lot of those secrets and traditions didn't make it over, and that's in the 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗏𝗏𝗏. It says we're born with 𝗀𝗲, but we still have to fulfill our debt with 𝗀𝗲𝗍, right, which is the 𝗀𝗲 that lives outside. And that's really where people get confused, because they're like, if I'm born with a head, why do I have to receive my 𝗃𝗲𝗍, right, which is the beautiful, cone-shaped structure that we consecrate the 𝗀𝗲 debt with. And what, I actually just got this question yesterday on the channel, and I'll answer it now. The reason we need our 𝗃𝗲𝗍 is not because that is replacing our 𝗀𝗲. By no means. What's occurring is that icon symbolizes us to nature as having fulfilled that debt. So when we go to actually, consecrate 𝗀𝗲, or align with 𝗀𝗲𝗍, what we do is we identify what are your specific debts with 𝗀𝗲, just based on 𝗀𝗲, and which Orishas you owe to based on, their debts to you with 𝗀𝗲 to them, right? So let's say, I have to offer Shango a ram based on him protecting my 𝗀𝗲. All those debts, we come down with a lot of debts, because you have to promise a lot to be able to make it out of heaven. Of the trillions of possibilities of human beings, we're actually here. We're a miracle, all of us. So 𝗀𝗲 is kind of a reiteration of that. So to be frank with you, that's the one that I give. Now there is a Lukumi one, and everybody has different paperwork, everybody has different preferences. But when I was able to learn about the 𝘃𝗶𝗃𝗍𝗏 𝗃𝗲𝗍 and see the concepts and the components that go into it, I was quickly convinced that this was the one I wanted to move forward with, and ultimately aid others in doing so with. So that's actually the one I give, and the one I received from my brother, my teacher, Lasarito Ofumbile. And my life changed. Ifa, obviously, all of these things are life changing, but I noticed a really significant change after that. The store either opened or went to another level. My relationship catapulted into another level where I was able to procreate. Like, all these things kind of started falling into place. So it's a bunch of pieces to the puzzle. But, some people, would say that 𝗀𝗲 is, I mean, me personally, I don't like consecrating 𝗀𝗲 before the person has hand of Ifa, because I need that odu to be able to consecrate your 𝗃𝗲𝗍𝗏, right? But for the gentleman that's meant to become babalawo, I actually like to do it after they do Ifa, because at that point we have your odu of Ifa. But either way, the most important thing is receiving it. There's things you can incorporate later to, sew things up. But that's pretty much 𝗀𝗲 in a nutshell. But it's something that everybody needs, along with 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗏, 𝗂𝗍, and 𝗃𝗏𝗏. In my opinion, those are the 4 most important deities apart from Orula and Eshu.
Yeah. So and that's the thing. So this Lukumi and Isese thing, because I come through Isese.
Mm-hmm.
Even though if you see the Orula that I wear on my neck, it's a Lukumi style. That's because of my great grandmother. She was a priestess in Lukumi.
Nice.
This is a way that I honor her, but it's also, in Oshun State, sometimes you can also see in Oshogbo like Oshun centric things. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And you might see different styled beats. Not
Oh
that
yeah.
they're just walking around with this, but you can see different styled beats there that have
Yeah.
Oshun incorporated in there. So, within that, You see a lot of a division that goes on between Lukumi and 𝘃𝗍𝗃,
Yeah.
right? Me personally, having been able to see both sides close up, I've come to realize that both can really learn a lot from each other.
Yeah.
Um, because like you said, there are a lot of secrets that are hidden in Nigeria, especially when we get into concepts and spirits like Egbe,
Yeah.
Egungun,
Oh yeah.
things like that. There's a lot of things. When you look on the Lukumi side, uh, because the Odus came to the new world, new experiences started to happen here, right? And so you could find out a thing in your Odu and Lukumi that you might have not have found out per se in 𝘃𝗍𝗃
Oh yeah.
because of the fact that you live in a new world. And because of that, over the hundreds of years that it's been here, the elders were watching their godchildren and saying, oh, wow, this person that was born, you know, uh, 𝗃𝗍𝗃𝗃 is going through this thing. And my other godchild is also 𝗃𝗍𝗃𝗃, and they're going through these things. That must be something that's a part of that. So they
Right.
kind of were able to expound on Odu within the new world. So there's a lot of things like that are occurring on both sides
Yeah.
that people can really benefit from. So kind of what is your stance on, the Lukumi versus 𝘃𝗍𝗃 thing, and kind of how do you stand with all of that?
Well, I think that we're the same people just with different colored beads on. I really do. I think that's what it comes down to, and I think we're allowing too much propaganda, agenda, and innuendo to
Hmm.
cause a separation. I don't
Yeah.
think that we're really opposed. I think what we need to be careful with are the agitators or the people that are trying to oppose us. You have people that, and it's irregardless of
Right.
time. It doesn't matter when someone got into Ifa, but I'm noticing that a lot of people that have seen the commercial aspect of Ifa or the political influence they can get from Ifa are starting to penetrate very rapidly and use it as a tool to be able to push an agenda that's completely unrelated to Ifa. Ifa in the 𝗃𝗍𝗃𝗃 identified that it has very little to do with politics other than settling matters, but it's not meant to influence anybody. And then when you see themes like color and race and all of these things being utilized to separate us, it's pretty sad, especially me being somebody that always saw, everybody involved because, where I'm from, there was really no gatekeeping. It didn't matter what color you were, it didn't matter where you came from. You were allowed in as long as you had that obligation and loyalty and, discipline with your godparents. You would get hopped in. But I think, between money, between political agenda and climate, between a real lack of preparation, I think that's what's separating us. But I tell you, there are so many things we can grow upon together, but I think it takes a level of recognition and respect. The same way, the Lukumi literature is to be respected because it is highly effective and the one I base myself upon. I think it's also important that we respect concepts and cultural interpretations that were around far before us. It's like a big thing that's dividing our faith right now is the 𝗃𝗍𝗃𝗃 Ifa concept. I meet a 𝗃𝗍𝗃𝗃 Ifa all the time. I salute them, 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗃𝗃, like there's no frustration whatsoever. Now, who am I to tell a clan that's been doing that for 500 years, 700 years, that they're wrong? I would be incapable of doing that because I was taught manners, right? We just, interact on a space where we're both comfortable. And there's no reason we can't move forward like that.
Right.
And if there is something that you're so, amoral towards or completely resistant towards, distance is better than disrespect. That's what 𝗃𝗏𝗧 said. So, if it has nothing to do with you, keep it moving, but I think it's important that we do have, like this, like these kind of
Right.
encounters, where we're able to recognize each other's great traits and allow the client to come to the conclusion who they want to be with at any given moment. Because they might receive hand of Ifa Lukumi, they might do Orisha 𝗃𝗍𝗃𝗃, they might do Ifa Lukumi. Like, it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, a process is a process,
Many.
So that's really my stance. We need to get it together. And we need to have respectful discourse, and we need to be open minded to a certain degree, and really remove the ego and the
Mhm.
motivation towards influence and fame and money. I think that's what's killing us.
Yeah, candomblé. When I look at Brazil, it gives me hope looking at Brazil. Um, Bra- Brazil has really found a way to connect to their 𝗃𝗍𝗃𝗍 brothers and sisters in a very mutual and respectful way. That's really helping to progress like candomblé. You know, these are these are things that it gives a glimpse of hope for the future. All around when you're looking at Orisha devotees around the world. Where people can find the differences and the commonalities and find ways to kind of bring it together. So Baba Joseph Ifa, in closing out, there's a lot of people listening that are new on their journeys to Ifa through Ifa. What advice would you give to those people who are seeking to come into this tradition?
Definitely. I would say to anybody that's watching this, first and foremost, congratulations on finding a channel such as Brujo's, somebody who's serious, somebody who's dedicated, and moving forward. First and foremost, I would say that you really have to identify why you want to get into these things, and every reason is legitimate as long as it's authentic, right? What could some of those things be? I want to better my health. I want to get in contact with my roots. Um, I want knowledge. Whatever it is, as long as it's ethical, you're welcome. And then the next step is really getting close to people with all the options that are out there nowadays. They're going to be able to help you accomplish your goals and then groom you towards your next ones. Because that's a big thing now where you're going to see a lot of people are quick to initiate, but they're not really quick to teach or mold. And
Mm-hmm.
because of it, we're having a huge demographic of people who become frustrated and ultimately leave because they're very interested and enthused to be a part of this. But it's like if you want to be a doctor, if no one teaches me how to be a doctor, especially if I'm willing to pay for school, I'm going to go be an engineer. And we really can't lose anybody anymore because we're falling behind because of these kind of situations and behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing is make sure you are sure, because Orumila and Ifa and Orisha really doesn't have time for half steppers. And what I mean by that is you need to be sure of what you're doing. You have to be confident in what you're doing. And even though you don't know everything, just know that you want to know more. And I think that'll avoid a bunch of situations. But we need serious people, we need logical people, we need loving people, and we need dedicated people that are going to help grow this. It's not that we're in
That's true.
competition with any other spirituality, but we do need to reclaim
Mm.
the magnitude that Ifa once had and can have moving forward. But for that, we need longevity and consistency, and I think we'll get there. So that's the best advice I can give to all the people coming in. And congratulations, this is a spirituality that works. It's accepting. There's a place for everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't dedicate our lives to it if we didn't see those results and all those miracles. There's really incredible stuff that happens here.
Yeah. So Baba Joseph Ifa, I'm grateful that you were able to bless my channel.
Oh man,
Baba Joseph Ifa is a treasure within the culture in any aspect of it, in any aspect of Orisha. This man is a treasure. So y'all be sure to always tune into the things he says and pay attention to, the things he has going on. Because that's a real one right here. So, with that said, family, y'all have a blessed journey through the culture. I'm here. We have people around us to help, further things in your journey and take advantage of the pure ones that you find and the ones that are true to the culture because you don't always run into those people, especially today. There's a lot of things that go on today. So when you find them, you hold on to those people and you soak up as much wisdom that you can get from it. And so, with that said, I catch you on the next one. Or Dabo.
Boriboya. Take care, guys.